All right, so you're interested in negotiation, huh? Well, you've come to the right place. We're diving deep into the world of negotiation today with all sorts of sources.
That's right. We've got expert opinions, anecdotes from Reddit and YouTube, even a glimpse into Harvard's negotiation program.
It's going to be fascinating to see how these different perspectives all come together.
Definitely. And we're going to break it all down into practical takeaways that you can actually use in your own life.
So whether you're trying to land a better job, score a deal on a car, or even just navigate those tricky family dynamics, this deep dive has got you covered.
You know, it's funny how negotiation skills are something we use every single day without even realizing it.
Totally. And the first thing that really struck me was how much emphasis there is on negotiation at Harvard.
Yeah, it's like they've built an entire empire around it.
Their program on negotiation at Harvard Law School, the PON, it's like a negotiation powerhouse.
Exactly. They've got their legendary book, Getting to Yes, and courses offered across multiple schools.
Clearly, they believe that negotiation is crucial not just for lawyers, but for anyone who wants to be successful in life.
And one concept that consistently rises to the top is your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Yeah, the BATNA kept popping up everywhere in our research.
It's the foundation of any strong negotiation strategy.
Like that story from Reddit about an MIT student trying to get into this Harvard negotiation class that was already full.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
This guy didn't just give up. He actually went out and strengthened his BATNA by figuring out alternative courses he could take and even connecting with people already enrolled in the class.
Smart move.
By doing so, he shifted the power dynamic in his favor. He could approach the professor knowing that he wasn't desperate.
He had options.
Exactly, and that gave him leverage in the negotiation.
It's a great lesson for all of us.
Yeah.
Before you walk into any negotiation, take the time to define your BATNA.
What are your options if this specific deal doesn't work out? Knowing that changes your whole approach.
Gives you confidence and the freedom to walk away if the terms aren't right.
So we've got our BTNA locked and loaded. Now let's talk about value creation.
This is where things get really interesting.
It's about moving beyond this idea of just trying to grab the biggest slice of the pie and instead figuring out how to bake a bigger pie so everyone benefits.
Love that analogy.
And this reminds me of that YouTube example about buying a house in Florida.
Oh yes, that was a great illustration of how understanding the other side's interests can unlock creative solutions.
The buyer in this story actually offered a slightly higher price for the house, which seems kind of counterintuitive at first.
Right, but by doing so, they were able to tap into the seller's underlying motivations.
It wasn't just about the highest price for the seller. They also wanted a smooth and quick closing.
Exactly, and by understanding that the buyer was able to secure a lower interest rate, get their closing costs covered, and even snag a one-year warranty on the house.
All because they weren't just focused on their own slice of the pie, but figured out how to sweeten the deal for everyone.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the best outcome comes from finding common ground and expanding the value for both parties.
Now let's talk strategy. One concept that really intrigued me was this whole idea of the setup.
The behind-the-scenes moves that can shape the entire game.
And we're not talking about anything shady here, just being smart and strategic.
Right, it's about understanding the power dynamics at play before you even walk into the room.
One of our sources shared this crazy example of a Harvard PhD student named Bruce Allen who ended up having to negotiate his way out of becoming a KGB spy.
Talk about high stakes.
It might sound extreme, but it highlights just how powerful the right setup can be.
Imagine being able to identify the real decision makers in a negotiation.
Or building relationships with key players beforehand so you have that foundation of trust.
Even something as simple as choosing the right time and place for the negotiation can give you an advantage.
So we've established that Harvard is a negotiation powerhouse. BATNA is your secret weapon. And value creation is a game changer.
We've only scratched the surface, though.
There are all sorts of tactical tips and psychological tricks that can really elevate your negotiation skills.
Like this fascinating thing called the anchoring effect.
Anchoring effect. Okay, I'm listening.
It's the idea that the first number thrown out in a negotiation, even if it's completely arbitrary, can disproportionately influence the final outcome.
So if I'm selling something, I should always aim to make the first offer.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
By anchoring the negotiation with a number that's favorable to you, you gain a psychological advantage.
But what if the other side tries to anchor first?
That's where your trusty BATNA comes back into play.
Yeah.
If their offer is below your walkaway point, you have the power to counter their anchor.
Makes sense. So it's not just about being the first to throw out a number, but also being prepared to counter their anchor with a strong, justifiable position of your own.
Exactly.
This is starting to feel like a mental chess match, figuring out how to position yourself for the best possible outcome.
It is in a way, but let's not forget the human element. We're not just dealing with numbers, we're dealing with people with emotions, with perceptions.
Right, and that brings us to another powerful psychological principle that's relevant to negotiation, the concept of consistency and commitment.
I love this one.
I remember seeing this mentioned in a Reddit post from a Harvard Business School student whose brother uses this technique to sell products at those lunch and learn
Oh
events.
yeah, that's a great example.
The idea is that once someone publicly commits to something, even in a small way, they're more likely to stay consistent with that commitment, even as the stakes
It's
increase.
like getting your foot in the door.
Exactly. And this guy, instead of just launching into a sales pitch, he strategically asks his audience questions designed to elicit agreement,
So he gets them to say yes to seemingly small things.
which then makes them more likely to say yes to the bigger ask buying his product.
Such a clever tactic.
And it all ties back to this idea of understanding human behavior, how our minds work, and how we make decisions.
And one of the most powerful psychological forces at play in negotiation is the principle of loss aversion.
Loss aversion. Explain that to me like I'm 5.
Okay, imagine you have two options. You can either gain $100 or you can avoid losing $100. Which option feels more motivating?
Hmm. I think avoiding the loss, it feels more urgent somehow.
Bingo. That's loss aversion in action. We tend to feel the pain of a loss much more acutely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
Interesting. So how does this apply to negotiation?
Let's say you're selling house insulation. Instead of focusing on the money customers will save on their energy bills,
Yeah.
you emphasize the money they're losing every day by not having insulation.
Ah, I see. You're turning the tables, shifting the focus from potential gain to potential loss.
And that shift can be incredibly persuasive because it taps into our innate fear of missing out or losing something valuable.
It's like those limited time offers you see everywhere. It creates that sense of urgency.
Exactly. By framing the negotiation in terms of what the other side stands to lose,
Oh.
you create a much stronger motivation for them to say yes.
This is blowing my mind. We're like peeling back the layers of human psychology and discovering all these hidden levers that can influence the way people think and behave.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
But it's not all about manipulation and mind games, is it? It's also about building trust and finding solutions that genuinely benefit everyone involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ethical considerations are paramount in any negotiation.
And that leads us to one of the most valuable pieces of advice I came across in our research, the concept of going to the balcony, as advocated by William Ury, one of the co-authors of Getting to Yes.
Ah, yes, going to the balcony. I love that metaphor.
It sounds so peaceful. Tell me more.
Imagine you're in a heated negotiation. Emotions are running high. The other side is pushing your buttons. You're starting to feel flustered.
Like you just want to scream.
Exactly. In those moments, it's crucial to take a step back, to detach yourself from the emotional intensity of the situation.
Take a deep breath.
Exactly. Uri uses this metaphor of stepping out onto a balcony, mentally separating yourself from the heat of the moment. This allows you to regain perspective, assess the situation calmly, and avoid making impulsive decisions that you might later regret.
It's like that age-old advice, never send an email when you're angry.
Precisely. Sometimes the best thing you can do in a negotiation is to take a break, go for a walk, grab a coffee, clear your head.
So when you feel yourself getting pulled into that emotional whirlpool of the negotiation, remember to go to the balcony.
It's your mental safe space where you can regain composure, think strategically, and make rational decisions that are in your best interest.
This is brilliant. It's like having a secret superpower for negotiators. But I have a feeling there's even more to uncover.
Absolutely. There are whole layers of tactical tips and strategies just waiting to be explored.
Like what?
We'll delve into specifics from our sources, things like reframing the conversation, building a golden bridge to agreement, even making it hard for the other side to say no.
I can't wait. This is like getting a masterclass in negotiation all condensed into a single deep dive.
Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah.
All right, so you're ready to get tactical.
Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, let's talk about some seriously clever tactics that can shift the balance of power in your favor.
Sounds good to me.
Remember that YouTube video we mentioned earlier, the one breaking down William Ury's book, Getting Past No?
Yeah.
He talks about a technique called stepping to the side, which is all about disarming the other person before you even address the main issue.
Interesting. So instead of charging headfirst into the negotiation, you're kind of taking a more strategic sideways approach.
Exactly. It's about shifting the energy from confrontation to collaboration. Erie suggests acknowledging the other person's feelings, maybe even apologizing if it's warranted, and showing them genuine respect.
Hmm. But wouldn't that make you seem weak? Or give the other side an advantage?
Not necessarily. Think of it like disarming a bomb. You wouldn't just yank out the wires without carefully neutralizing the explosives first,
Yeah.
right? Stepping to the side is about creating a space for calm, rational discussion.
Okay, I see. So you're not immediately pushing back against their demands, but you're taking a moment to understand where they're coming from.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yuri gives this example of a small business owner negotiating with an employee who wants to quit. Instead of getting defensive, the owner listens carefully and discovers that the employee needs more money to care for his aging parents.
Wow, that changes the whole dynamic.
Right. By understanding the employee's underlying needs, the owner is able to propose a flexible work schedule that allows the employee to take on a side job.
A win-win.
Exactly. The employee gets the financial security he needs, and the owner retains a valuable employee.
It's a reminder that sometimes the best solutions come from really listening and looking beyond those surface demands.
Absolutely.
Now, Yuri also talks a lot about the power of reframing. What exactly does he mean by that?
Reframing is all about shifting the lens through which you view the negotiation. Instead of arguing over fixed positions, you try to find a way to solve a problem together.
Okay.
And the YouTube video actually highlights a few techniques for reframing. One that I found particularly insightful is asking for advice.
Asking for advice in the middle of a negotiation, that seems kind of strange.
It might sound counterintuitive, but it's a brilliant way to turn your opponent into an ally. Instead of battling against each other, you're inviting them to help you find a solution. They give this example of a small business owner negotiating with a supplier who wouldn't budge on price. Instead of arguing, the owner asks the supplier for advice on how to make the deal work.
So it's like saying, okay, I get that you can't lower the price, but maybe you have some ideas on how we can make this work for both of us.
Exactly. By asking for advice, you subtly shift the dynamic. The supplier, flattered by the request, might be more willing to offer concessions or brainstorm creative solutions.
It's like turning the tables and making the other side feel like they're part of the solution, not the problem.
I like it.
Mm.
Another reframing technique they highlight is asking why.
Why?
It's all about understanding the other side's interest, not just their stated position.
Digging deep.
Exactly. What are their underlying needs, fears, aspirations? They use this example of a customer demanding a lower price. Instead of just saying no, the negotiator asked, why is this particular price so important to you? And that's how they uncovered that the customer had a very specific budget constraint.
Interesting.
Armed with that understanding, they were able to find a solution that met the customer's budget while still working for the business. Sometimes it's not about the initial demand, but about the why behind it.
Makes sense.
The YouTube video also talked about using what-if questions as a way to reframe the conversation.
What if questions? How does that work?
What-if questions are a great way to introduce new ideas and possibilities without rejecting the other side's suggestions outright. It keeps the conversation flowing and encourages creative thinking. They gave an example of two friends negotiating where to open their next shop. One insisted on staying in the same city, while the other wanted to expand to a new area. Instead of arguing, they used what-if questions to explore other options. What if we conducted a market survey to see which location has more demand? What if we considered a pop-up shop to test the waters before committing to a lease?
Ah, so it's about opening up the conversation instead of shutting it down.
Exactly. And it makes the other side feel heard and respected, which can go a long way in building trust.
No, one of the most powerful takeaways for me was Uri's concept of building a golden bridge.
Ah, yes. That's all about making it easy for the other side to say yes, even if they're initially resistant to your proposal.
Like paving the path to agreement, removing any obstacles that might be blocking their way.
Exactly. And Uri outlines 4 main barriers that prevent people from agreeing.
Okay, what are they?
1, it's not their idea. 2, their interests aren't being addressed. 3, they're worried about looking bad. And 4, they feel rushed or pressured.
So how do you build this golden bridge and overcome these barriers?
It's about involving them in creating the solution, making sure their needs are met, helping them save face, and giving them time and space to make a decision.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It can be, but it's worth it. They give this great example of a wife who wants to go on a beach vacation and her husband who wants to visit his parents. At first, it seems like they're at odds.
Classic scenario.
But when the wife digs deeper, she discovers that her husband is worried about his father's health.
Ah, Nice.
So by acknowledging his concerns and reframing the vacation as an opportunity to check on his dad and get some relaxation, she builds that golden bridge to agreement.
That's a good one. It highlights how empathy and understanding can be the key to unlocking a solution that works for everyone.
Absolutely.
But what happens when, despite your best efforts, the other side just digs in their heels and refuses to budge?
That's when you might need to employ a more assertive tactic, what RuPaul's making it hard to say no.
Making it hard to say no. How do you do that?
It's not about threats or ultimatums. It's about helping them see that their refusal is not in their best interest. Ari suggests asking questions like, what do you think will happen if we don't agree? Or, what will you do if we don't reach a deal? How will that impact you?
So it's about gently guiding them to a more realistic assessment of their options.
Exactly. They use the example of Lee Iacocca, the president of Chrysler, who had to convince Congress to approve a loan to save the company. Many lawmakers were against a bailout.
Oh, wow, that sounds intense.
It was a high-stakes negotiation.
Right.
But Iacocca brilliantly reframed the situation. Instead of pleading for Chrysler's survival, he focused on the devastating consequences for the country if the company went bankrupt.
So instead of saying, please save us, he was saying, this is what you stand to lose if you don't help.
Precisely. By painting a vivid picture of the potential losses, he convinced Congress that saving Chrysler was in their best interest as well.
That's some next-level negotiation.
It's about understanding the bigger picture, the long-term consequences, and using that knowledge to persuade the other side.
But even after you've reached an agreement, the negotiation isn't truly over, is it?
Good point. There's still the whole implementation phase to consider.
And this is where relationship building really comes into play, right?
Absolutely. Yuri emphasizes the importance of making sure the other side feels satisfied with the deal. He even suggests being generous at the end, going above and beyond to solidify that positive feeling.
So it's not just about winning the negotiation, it's about fostering a sense of goodwill and cooperation that can extend beyond the immediate deal.
Exactly. He gives this example of a hostage negotiator who always makes sure the hostage taker wins the last round, even if it's something small.
Interesting.
It's about creating a sense of fairness and reducing the likelihood of future conflict.
It's like that saying, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Building and maintaining strong relationships is crucial in any negotiation, whether it's a business deal or even just deciding where to go for dinner with your family.
So true. We've covered so much ground here, from the halls of Harvard to hostage negotiations.
It's been a wild ride. What are your biggest takeaways from all these insights into the psychology of negotiation?
I think what's most striking is how interconnected all these concepts are. We've got BATNA value creation, reframing, building a golden bridge, understanding loss aversion. They all work together to form this really comprehensive approach to negotiation.
It's like having a toolbox filled with different tools for different situations.
Exactly. And the more tools you have, the better equipped you'll be to handle whatever challenges come your way.
And speaking of tools, let's not forget about all those tactical tips we've gathered from the Reddit trenches, where people are negotiating everything from salaries to kayak rentals.
Oh yeah, those Redditors are a wealth of information.
So let's hear it. What are these everyday negotiators teaching us about navigating the real world of negotiation? So we've got all this high-level strategy from the Harvard folks and the deep psychological tactics from William Ury.
Now it's time to hit the streets.
Yeah, let's get down and dirty with some real-world wisdom from the Reddit trenches.
It's amazing to see how these everyday negotiators are using the principles we've been talking about.
Oh yeah, they're dealing with real-life stuff like haggling for a better price or trying to land a dream job.
Their insights are pure gold.
One thing that really stood out from these Reddit threads was this emphasis on loss aversion.
Right. People are often more motivated to avoid a loss than to get something new.
It's like those classic sales techniques where they focus on what you'll lose if you don't buy the product.
Instead of what you'll gain.
Exactly. One Redditor shared this great story about selling their old car. They didn't just list the car's features, they focused on how much money the buyer was losing each day by not having a reliable vehicle.
Clever.
Yeah, they really emphasized the cost of inaction.
Brilliant. It subtly shifts the way the other side sees the value of what you're offering.
And speaking of value perception, the Redditors also had some great tips on using reference points.
Oh yeah, those are super powerful.
How do those work?
It's about framing your offer strategically next to something else. So let's say you're selling a product for $100 and you put it right next to a similar product that costs $200.
Suddenly yours looks like a steal.
Exactly. It's like those compare at prices you see in stores.
Yeah.
They make you feel like you're getting a great deal.
Totally. Another tactic that kept coming up was the compromise effect.
Ah, yes, the art of the decoy.
Break it down for me.
Okay, imagine you're selling a car with 3 different trim levels.
Yeah.
Basic, mid-range, and fully loaded.
Okay.
If you want to steer them towards the mid-range option, you might actually highlight the fully loaded one, even if it's not a realistic choice for them.
So you're using the expensive option as a decoy.
Exactly. It makes the mid-range seem like the best value.
It's like the popcorn sizes at the movie theater, small, medium, large.
Right.
Everyone ends up choosing the medium because it feels like the sweet spot.
Exactly. It's a subtle nudge towards your desired outcome.
I love it. Now, the Redditors also had some great tips on using consistency and commitment.
Oh, yes. We talked about this earlier with the Harvard Business School student whose brother uses this to sell products at those lunch and learns.
Yeah, it's all about getting small agreements first, which then makes them more likely to agree to bigger things later on.
Like building momentum.
One Redditor mentioned negotiating a raise with their boss. They started by asking for a small concession, like being able to work from home once a week.
Smart move.
Once the boss agreed to that, they used it as leverage to negotiate a bigger salary increase.
It plays on our desire to be consistent with our previous actions.
It's like, you already said yes to this, so why not say yes to this too?
Human psychology at its finest.
And finally, running through all these Reddit threads, there was one big takeaway.
Preparation.
Yeah, the Harvard experts emphasize that too.
It doesn't matter how smooth you are at the negotiating table if you haven't done your homework.
You've got to know your BAT&A, understand the other side, and have a clear vision of what you want to achieve.
Practice your delivery. Anticipate objections, have a backup plan.
Like they say, failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Words to live by.
Wow, this has been a wild ride through the world of negotiation. Expert insights, real-life stories, and tactical tips galore.
From the halls of Harvard to the Reddit trenches, we've covered it all.
So tell me, what's the one negotiation tactic or insight that you'll be taking with you this week?
You know, I think for me, it's the power of reframing.
Yeah.
It's such a versatile tool. It helps you shift from fighting to problem solving.
Totally. I'm going to focus on strengthening my BAT&A before any negotiation.
Excellent choice. Knowing you have strong alternatives gives you the confidence to walk away if the terms aren't right.
For sure. And remember, folks, negotiation is a skill that develops over time. The more you practice, the better you'll get.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear from you. What negotiation tactic are you focusing on this week? Share your thoughts with us on social media.
Keep the conversation going.
And remember, even the pros are constantly learning and adapting.
So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep honing those skills.
You got this. We'll see you next time.